I'm Dan Mitchell of the Cato Institute, here to narrate a video for the Center for Freedom and Prosperity on the global flat tax revolution. 24 nations now have simple and fair flat tax systems. Places such as Estonia, Hong Kong, Slovakia, and Iceland are enjoying rapid economic growth thanks to tax systems that don't penalize people for being productive. These flat tax systems also are leading to more revenue in some cases, reaffirming not just the ordinary Laffer curve response, but showing that indeed, in a few rare cases, tax cuts sometimes do pay for themselves. But most important of all, the flat tax revolution signifies a victory over the notion that the tax code should be used to penalize those who contribute most to economic growth. And the ultimate irony is that this revolution in both economic and moral attitudes is being led by nations in Central and Eastern Europe, countries that were part of the communist bloc just 2 decades ago. And thanks to tax competition, it's likely that the list of flat tax nations will continue to expand. Because the geese that lay the golden eggs can more easily fly across borders, globalization is putting pressure on politicians to lower tax rates and reform tax systems. Maybe someday, even France, the United States, and North Korea will have a flat tax. Let's take a moment to describe the key principles of a flat tax. They include a single flat rate, ideally at a low level, so that the tax code no longer penalizes productive behavior. Elimination of special preferences, so that politicians can't trade loopholes for campaign cash, and ordinary people can have a simple tax return. And to eliminate the tax bias against savings and investment, no double taxation. This means the tax police only get one bite at the apple. No death tax, no capital gains tax, no second layer of tax on dividends or interest, no wealth tax, nothing. Tax once, only once. The changes that are sweeping the world really are remarkable. Up until 1980, the only jurisdictions with flat tax systems were Hong Kong and 2 very obscure British territories, Jersey and Guernsey. Today, by contrast, there are 24 flat tax systems, and this revolution is especially remarkable because so many wanted to dismiss it as a fad. As recently as 2006, an International Monetary Fund study boldly stated that the question is not so much whether more countries will adopt a flat tax as whether those that have it will move away from it. Yet within months of the IMF study's publication, 4 new nations were part of the flat tax club, and more nations jumped on the bandwagon last year. Now, let's back up for a second. There's no nation with a pure flat tax and a postcard-sized tax return. Nonetheless, many countries have done a remarkable job of coming very close to a pure system. Hong Kong, for instance, has a low-rate optional flat tax of 15%, and this has generated great results. It's been the fastest-growing economy in the world since the end of World War II, jumping to per capita income of $30,000, up from less than $2,000. And for the class warfare left-wingers in the audience here, you'll be interested in knowing that the bottom 60% pay no tax, while the richest 100,000 taxpayers in Hong Kong, the top 8%, they pay 57% of the burden. Let's shift to Estonia. This is another great story. Its flat tax rate is 21%. There's no double tax on corporate income. Interest is free of double taxation. There's no wealth tax and no death tax. What about economic growth? It's averaging 9% even after adjusting for inflation. And the flat tax has even been good for Estonian politicians. The budget has been in surplus for the last 6 years, and revenues are skyrocketing. Personal income tax revenues have doubled since 2000, and corporate revenues have jumped by about 300% during the same period. Let's look at Iceland. Iceland's actually an exception to the rule that flat tax systems have low tax rates. Its rate is 35.7%. That's kind of high. But Iceland has done a great job lowering double taxation. The corporate rate, for instance, is just 18%, and the government just announced it'll drop it to 15%. And even though the rate has been dramatically reduced, or perhaps because it has been reduced, corporate tax revenues have jumped significantly, rising from less than 1% of GDP to more than 2% of GDP. There's also a low flat tax rate of just 10% on dividends, interest, and capital gains. The death tax has been cut to 5%, and the wealth tax abolished. Iceland is now one of the 10 richest countries in the world, and unemployment is almost non-existent, with only about 2% of the working-age population without a job. There are lots of other success stories we could talk about, but we want to keep this short. We also have one pretty clear message. Globalization has had a positive impact on tax policy because governments now have to compete with each other. The Thatcher and Reagan tax rate reductions began the process of tax competition, and the global tax reform revolution is the latest chapter. You can do your part in helping this revolution by sharing this video with your friends and colleagues. I'm Dan Mitchell, and on behalf of the Center for Freedom and Prosperity, thanks for watching.